But after all that, this epoxy has finally died. Hello my dolly dearies, and welcome to another video. Now today we are going on the much spookier side of Halloween, making a proper monster, because I noticed a lot of my Halloween creatures are all quite friendly, so I thought it about time we rectify that. This year I'm going to be trying to make something truly horrifying and frightening, something which is what people have nightmares of when they think about dolls. Of course, for inspiration I go to the best place ever, Pinterest, and I made a board and I found these amazing skeletal creatures called gashadokuro. I've probably said that wrong, please look up how to say it, I think I did it okay. And taking some inspiration from these skeletal monsters and a bit of Nina from Fullmetal Alchemist, I came up with this design. I think she's suitably spooky, and it should be interesting to see how we can make her as a doll. This is definitely going to be one of the most ambitious projects I've done, so without any further ado, let's get into the video. For this doll, we will be using Skelita as a base. Due to the fact that she is a skeleton, it takes out some of the legwork in making a doll into a skeleton. But we're still going to have to give her quite a few modifications. But to begin, we can remove her head by heating her neck up with a hairdryer. Heating up the head means that the squishy vinyl of the head will come off and not break the neck peg. I also forgot to trim her hair, so some of it actually got burnt off her head, which was a bit weird. Yeah. It kind of stuck together and I couldn't salvage the hair anyway, but it was weird. But we can remove her head very easily now. With her head removed, we can now remove her hair. Taking a small pair of sharp scissors, I cut the hair as close to the head as possible. This will make it much easier to pull all of the little plugs out through the neck hole. Then, taking a pair of needle nose pliers, I can scrape all of the hair plugs out from the inside of the head. This then lets me pull them through the neck hole so that her head is completely clear and fresh for when we add our own. However, I did encounter a bit of a problem with this doll, in that the gunk on the inside of her head did not want to come out. No matter how hard I tried, no matter how I manipulated my pliers, it would not budge. It was slightly strange, so of course we have to do something a bit different. We cut open the back of her head to give us a much bigger opening and pull all of the gunk of hair out from there. It just came out in these huge, dry, crusty chunks, which tore apart when I picked them up with my pliers. So it was really difficult to get a hold of them, and I can see why they tore coming through the neck hole. But now we can get on to removing her face paint with acetone. Taking a wipe of 100% acetone, I tried to remove her face all in one go. Did not work amazingly well. I believe that one day we will get there. But for now, we can set her head aside. We're going to be working on the most difficult part of this, the body modifications. A good thing about her being skeletal means I don't have a lot of work to do when it comes to breaking her apart. Instead of having to take a saw, I can take some bolt cutters and very easily snip through the plastic. I divide up both portions of her legs, leaving her knees in between, her neck, her shoulders and forearms, as well as her spine. I then take a drill and drill holes big enough for some thick wire into all of these. Across the body parts, I also use a much finer drill so that I can thread more wire through to hold it together. And gluing this in place and putting her together, she's looking a bit freaky, but I'm hoping that we can fix that with epoxy sculpt. Using the very last dregs of my epoxy sculpt, I can press all of it onto her. We're going to be fleshing out the neck and the spine first and foremost because they were the most delicate bits. I didn't attach her lower legs right now because it would be much too much hassle to try and navigate around not bending the wire while trying to let the body and spine and neck dry. One thing I did notice about the ends of my epoxy is I had a lot more of one part than the other, so some of that other part is going to be going into the bin. But after all that, this epoxy has finally died. But with her body modifications all done and built in, we can get on to adding something for her tail. I drilled a smaller hole through her backside and a bigger one in which the circular ball of the tail can sit, and threaded some elastic through that. But we can get on to our brand new epoxy sculpt. This time I've got the grey stuff, and one thing that I did end up noticing about the grey stuff when I used it is immensely more stinky and smelly than the white stuff. If anybody else has had this experience, let me know in the comments below. Maybe that's just the scent of brand new epoxy which hasn't been sitting on my shelf for a couple of years. It was weird. Let me guys know your experiences with epoxy sculpt in the comments down below. Following Delightful's dragon tail tutorial for her dragon Aurora, I have a tail for this doll, using the grey epoxy sculpt to make the spikes, along with some nifty horns, which do need a bit of detailing still added to them. But we can get on to adding a base coat of paint. After priming it with some white gesso, I try my best to colour match to the skin tone that Skelita, well, not skin tone, bone tone, that Skelita already has, to paint over the epoxy sculpt to give it a nice, uniform colour. I actually think I did a pretty good job colour matching this doll, which I am vastly surprised about. But with everything colour matched and some detail on sculpting added to the horns, we can get on to the fun bit, the blushing. It has been a good long while since I've done body blushing on a doll, and on this doll I am not going to hold back. For a really gritty, dark look, I'm adding as much pigment as I can and blending it out, giving it a really worn, musky, dirty feel. It was really fun to just not hold back with how much pastel I added, and I think it had a really cool effect in the end. Blushing and using pastel really breathes life into a doll, and I used it to add some nifty gradients to her horns, and I really love it. But now we've got to seal all of that in with a coat of Mr. Super Clear. And with her body blushing done, we can get onto her face. Taking a brownish pencil, I sketch in some wide, shocked pupils. I want her to look slightly shocked but also menacing, which is a weird balance to get. So very wide eyes and very tiny little pupils. The great thing about a lot of blushing as well is my pinkish pencil blends extraordinarily well down, so any mistakes which I do make are covered up so much easier than on other dolls. But I can go straight in almost instantly with black pencil, as I'm very happy with my sketch, adding in a super defined eyeline. And since I am planning to add more blushing to this doll, I just need to be able to see my sketch first and foremost. Adding all of the black, even if it seems a bit bold now, will not be as bold later on. And instead of making the whites of her eyes white, I also decide to make them grey, as that I feel will make her bright red glaring eyes stand out much better than if they were just a regular white. Going back in yet again with a much finer black pencil, I use it to add much more detail and a much thinner line to the edge of her eye. While I do want it to be very visible, I don't want it to seem too thick and too much like eyeliner or makeup, which, as we all know, is very characteristic on my dolls. So I try to thin out the line a bit, and I also use it to outline her irises so that they will stand out really well against the grey. I also start blocking in some red as a base on them. Using these basic colours, I continue to go back and forth to build up colour and build up the look that I really want for this doll. Wanting her eyes to really stand out and pop, since she's going to have dark hair hanging over her face. I want the eyes to slightly blend with the dark hair, but to have the red irises really pop out at you. I also start to add some detail to her lips, using a much more neutral, skin-toned, pinky colour for the lips rather than a red or bright pink. And using more browns to shade them over, as before mentioned, reds and pinks. I can also begin to sketch in the semblance of some eyebrows. While I know that she is a skeleton and would not logically have eyebrows, I feel they add quite a lot to her expression, so we're gonna forgive some of reality in the name of artistic freedom. Using very sharp pencils, I go in and continually add detail. I want this doll to be a lot more detailed and realistic and fine in its details compared to some of my other dolls which have been more comic-y. My last doll is a perfect example of this, even though her aim was to be comic-y. I also go in and add more darkness to her lips. After going in a bit too heavy-handed with a black pencil, I take a nifty little turtle eraser. I really recommend doll artists get a bunch of these little animal erasers because their little limbs and the way they're sculpted gives you really fine erasers that are great for getting into the little nooks and crannies of a doll's face sculpt. I also begin to sketch in her layer of teeth across the side of her face. I was originally thinking about making this a body modification, but she's already got quite a weak neck, so to add on like a weakness of the jaw around the neck area, which would be a pain to get her head back on, I'm not gonna risk it. That might be a project for another doll in future to give it a jaw which I carve out and expand, but not on this one. I block in some colour on the teeth with white, which I will add some yellow to make them a bit more ghastly later, and after I'm happy with my line, I can go in and define it with a black pencil. I begin to give the little white blobs I sketched out for teeth more of a shape in black, making sure that they are equal and symmetrical on both sides. While she is a monster, I would like her teeth to be a bit symmetrical, because here in Britain we're not known for having great teeth, so at least I can make some of my dolls have good teeth. Now it is time to break out to the pastels once more. Now that I've already blocked in a lot of the eye, I don't especially need my guidelines anymore, meaning I can go in really heavy-handed on her face with these pastels, giving her really red, deep, sunken eyes, and much more of a ghastly, haunted, scarred look, and adding some depth to the jaw. I go over the jawline again, defining it with black pencil, a bit tougher this time so I can see where not to erase with my eraser to get any of the spare pastel which went over the line. I feather out the ends of her eyebrows a bit by adding in some more pastels to give them a bit of a softer look. But now it is time to break out the gouache paints. This will really help the colours of the eyes come out super duper brightly and work out really nicely. I use the back of my hand as a painting palette because it's convenient there and there, and add in some small dotted highlights to her eyes. I then also take the white gouache to add some real brightness and vividness to her teeth, which really make them pop out against the rest of the face. I then go around the teeth outlining them in black to make them pop even more. It's a little bit comic-y, but I feel it works for this doll since she already looks quite dark and it really helps everything pop out and work well together. I also add in some fangs to her lips and I go slightly over the line so I neaten it up with my pencil. I also turn to my pencils, lifting up some pigment directly off of them to give the eyes the right colour. All of the reds in my gouache set are quite bright and I didn't really feel like mixing up any extra paint, so I just lifted them off the pencil to get the colours which were already there. I do the same thing with pigment from a yellow pencil to add some greasiness and yellowing to her teeth. But with her face all done, we can add gloss to her eyes, teeth and lips with some Liquitex High Gloss varnish. And with that all sealed in, we can reattach her head to her body. Since I really didn't want to crack this face up, I make sure to heat up her head a lot with my hairdryer. And I can use up the last bits of this dark brunette's hair from the Doll Emporium, go and check them out, link in description box below, by making it into wefts and using the darker hair on her. I carefully glue the wefts in place between her horns. It was very difficult to navigate around these due to the size of them and due to the thickness of the hair. The brown hair itself is quite thick, which is closer to real life, and it's heavier, which works perfectly for this doll, but it was very difficult to figure out how because it kept on wanting to spring out of place and jump away from me. But with all of her hair eventually glued on, she's managing to look quite ghastly, if I do say so myself. Now all that's left is to give her a little bit of dignity and some clothes. Ruffling up some tulle, I give her a little petticoat, and we're going to be a bit cheaty for the rest of her clothes and look into the clothes box. Over many a doll lots that have been ordered online or gifted to me, I get my fair share of doll clothes with them. Unfortunately, not very many shoes. But with so many doll clothes, I've got to be able to find a use for some of them, right? There's got to be something in here that'll work. Hell, we even have Deuce's Gorgon hair from an old doll. I root around in the box looking for what could work, aiming for more the longer gowns that I can cut up and tear up into something elegant yet dishevelled. And I eventually find this slightly ratty Draculaura dress. I actually have another one of these which I put on Mini-Me for some videos, so using the older rattier one is okay because I've got a spare. I have to remove that lovely pink interior. As much as I love pink and I love the shade and it makes the dress look so pretty, it's not quite right for this character. So taking my seam ripper, I rip around the edge of it, not wanting to unpick the stitches for fear that they might be linking up to the other skirts and unravel those. With the pretty pink taken away, we can get on to slightly disheveling and making this dress how we want. We of course have to get rid of all the glittery pink dots and the nice colours, so I paint over those with black and use a crimson for the pink lacing. And then taking my seam ripper, I tear away at the skirts. This fabric was really light and thin, so really took well to the seam ripper. And after cutting some slits and trying my best to make it somewhat fit to the doll, it looks pretty cool. But with that, she's done! She is quite tall, isn't she? I mean, she barely fits on screen, and I even had to tape her down after a while to record this outro. She's pretty cool, and I'm actually really proud of her. Her body mods are some of the best that I think I've ever done on a doll, colour matching the same, and she's definitely one of, if not the most ambitious project that I've ever taken on. To say I am overjoyed at how she turned out would be putting it lightly. I love this doll, and the chance to make something scary and creepy was really, really fun. But as always guys, if you like this video, please like, subscribe, and maybe even share with a friend, and leave a comment down below saying that you've enjoyed the video. And don't forget that I've got a Redbubble now, make sure to go and check that out, link in the description box below. But thank you guys all so much for watching, I hope you guys had a good Halloween, and I shall see you all next year. Bye!